Welcome everyone to our weekly HDI Local Chapters live stream show. Today's show, our sponsor is Robert Half Technology. They help companies build, deploy, and operate technology in the digital world. And they do this by placing highly skilled IT professionals on a contract, project, or full-time basis. You can browse available candidates, you can search for jobs, and you can access additional valuable information on hiring and career insights online at roberthalf.com/technology. Not only is Robert Half our show sponsor, but our guest today also is from Robert Half. Today our guest is Zach, I hope I don't mess this up, Zach Jiru. Did I get that close? All right.
Actually, that's a lot better.
I get, you know. So before we get started, Zach, let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Zach is a current member of HDI. He's the vice president of the Sacramento, California chapter. He's also the director of the technology division at Robert Half. He partners with companies and clients all throughout the Central Valley. Prior to that, though, Zach spent about 12 years working in education, primarily in the student services field, where he focused on graduate outcomes. So basically, Zach's bringing today with him tremendous knowledge on job searching, interviewing, and resume writing. So welcome to the show,
No pressure.
Zach.
No pressure, right, Tom?
No pressure, no pressure. All right, so here's the deal. Last week, we talked about resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn profiles. Today, we're going to talk about the current hiring environment, virtual job searches, networking, and working with a recruiter. So, Zach, let's start this out by telling everybody what you see, Robert Half sees as the current hiring environment out there for IT professionals and anybody.
Yeah, so the environment right now, I guess if you could sum it up in one word, it would be different. Just from a year ago, I think things almost flipped on their head. I mean, we were at record low unemployments, pre-pandemic. And then it nearly tripled the unemployment rate over that period of time. The good news is I know we have been making quite a few steps. The newest numbers from last month, we were just shy of 400,000 jobs gained. So tremendous growth, definitely opportunities. But in terms of technology in particular, I think that there's a huge, opportunity there. And, that's for a variety of reasons. But really, it has forced quite a few different companies and several industries to start making changes, and probably past due changes. I mean, if we're being honest, some of these companies were dragging their feet, and the pandemic really sped up, them being forced to make changes.
Yeah, no kidding there, and that's a whole nother topic. I think we're going to have for a SmackDown event is like working remote. We actually had one about working remote versus working online, but I think about some of the organizations that I have worked for whose attitude is we can't work remotely because for various reasons. But so since we're out of since we're still in COVID, but we're kind of getting out of COVID, has things been getting better? Or is there an expectation on when the market may come back or start more? I have to tell you, last week we talked about LinkedIn profiles and such, and I have a decent presence on LinkedIn, and I noticed a lot of my friends out there on LinkedIn have been posting like, "Hey, a new position," and instead of that, what is it? The little thing underneath your picture that says "willing to work" or "looking for work,"
available for work,
for work, and now they're all the So I have seen it start. Is that getting better, or is there a projection when things may get better?
I would say that's definitely the trend, and I think on the IT side we're able to see that maybe even a little bit faster than other positions or other industries, because IT has become so ingrained across the board in terms of, I mean, we've seen hotbeds of hiring in technology, not just for technology companies. I mean, MSPs have grown. I mean, we can see that companies that weren't able to handle their own infrastructure, they've kind of outsourced to MSPs. So we've seen that natural growth. But But I mean, think of healthcare, for example, the boom there of, the mass hirings, having to track and, log all of this data, but not just that, but keep it secure. So healthcare exploded. I think that's kind of a given. Education is another one where, you want to talk about being behind the trend in education. Some of these places were almost threw up their hands and didn't know what to do. I have kids, so I can definitely tell you that.
Yeah, I work for a university, so I know, I know exactly what you're saying.
So, I mean, we've had projects where it's, hey, we didn't expect to have to, have 2,000 kids, remote learn, help us. And it's not just setting up, kids on a tablet to get on a Zoom, but think about all of the help desk calls that are coming in about not being able to log in or having questions and how do I, navigate this? And you have staff, you have teachers, you have students, and probably the majority of those calls are coming from parents, just having to navigate that. So technology being ingrained in education, again, I think it was a swift kick in the pants to get education on board to start moving forward. Government, I mean, I think we all know how slow government moves, but they've started to make those changes, and we've seen investments really across the country in all three of those spaces: healthcare, government, education, where they're really investing in their own infrastructure. They're making changes, and there are really good opportunities and multiple hiring. There's jobs out there. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could sum it up shortly, there's jobs out there for technology, and we're looking at it on the infrastructure side as well as the software and development side. So whatever your cup of tea, there's opportunities, and that's a good thing.
I'm glad you brought that up, because this show is like we're our goal is to try to share with people out there that there's more to technology careers than gaming or YouTubing. There's programming, there's engineering, there's all kind of things. So Zach, first of all, I probably have 1,000 questions for you, being both a hiring manager and in the past looking for a job. But we do have somewhat of a time limit in the show. But I do want to ask, if anybody, listening to this live stream on Twitch, if you have a question for Zach on job searching or things we're going to talk about today, please type them into the chat. Zach can see them, he can answer them, and this is more about answering questions for the audience as well as just Zach and I here shooting the breeze, right? So, Zach, let's move on to talking about tips for online job searching. Because now, this is 2021, or is it March? I think today is March 290 or 396th, 2020, because on the calendar. But seriously, a lot of things are online. So there's a couple things. Talk about online job searching versus. I hear this thing about. I just saw this. I think it was from your company. I got an email a couple days ago about. I don't say most, but a lot of jobs aren't necessarily posted on those big online job search boards. So let's talk about like online job searching for people today.
Yeah, so it's again, I go back to it's different now, and there's probably a lot more opportunities. We've seen companies again across the country be more open to and to be fair, it's out of necessity, but more open to remote positions. So, individuals, I'm here in California, you're on the East Coast. Really, we could have California technology folks working on the East Coast, and we do. But those opportunities are becoming more and more prevalent. And so where that was not the norm, I would say, a year ago. Can you imagine asking where you work, Tom, just saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to start working from home, guys. It just wasn't an option. It wasn't available. And to be fair, it didn't need to be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. When we're looking up jobs online, you're right, they are there. And companies that normally wouldn't post in other states or other time zones, they're starting to do that. And we see that more and more in technology. And why? Because to be frank, there's a lack of technology talent out there. So, I mean, folks in, pick anywhere in the Midwest that are having, a hard time finding, high-end Java developers, and there's not any in Kansas. I mean, I don't know. There's probably a few. I pick on Kansas because I went to school there. So, they may reach out to California.
Yeah,
where we have a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, Zach, one of the questions I had was so another thing I've been hearing is the Silicon Valley, like all the big tech jobs and we're hearing that for some of the places like Los Angeles and Seattle, like some of the people are moving out of the cities or they're from outside looking for jobs because being able to work remotely is a thing apparently. Right. And I know I have a few folks so I work in higher education, and sometimes my joke is, and I'm just joking, it's not all universities are like this, but in higher ed we tend to be 10 years behind the business sector on thinking and doing things in technology sometimes. And I know we're thinking now, going back, we share offices, which is I'm not sure why it's taboo now, because it always should have been. People come in with colds and flus and everything else. And now that so my boss is actually putting out a survey coming up saying, hey, how comfortable do you feel about coming back, and would you consider working remotely at least part of the time? I actually have a person that works for me that's thinking about moving an hour and a half to 2 hours away because he can do his job remotely, all of it. Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought that, right? All right,
but you do see that though, in those hiring boards, it is a good source for people that are looking for positions. I mean, there are big boards out there for individuals to not just post your resume, but to see, who's hiring and where they're at. I think Robert Half or other staffing agencies, we add just a different take on that, and as much as big companies like to post that they're hiring, there are some positions where, they reach out to, companies like Robert Half, and they'll say, hey, we're looking for this. We don't want to put a big sign, or there's no bells and whistles saying, hey, we're filling this role, but, who do you have? And I think that's where we're able to step in and help people, again, across the country, find those roles. And, whether you're relocating, maybe you got tired of, trust me, there's plenty of people that are tired of California. So, maybe you don't have any reason to be here anymore because you can work remotely. So you're going to switch states, and, you're able to find those openings.
So funny you say, no, I don't plan on leaving. So if anybody from my company's watching, my university, the joke, my wife and I have, people that know me, we're big RVers, and if I could just get in my RV and travel the country and work remotely from there, that would be awesome, right? Yeah. So let's talk about working with somebody like Robert Half, working with a recruiter. You did mention something key. I remember the last time I was looking for a job was right around 2012, and I spent hours a day looking at my limited knowledge of companies out there, surfing their websites, looking for jobs, because I was looking at the Monsters and the other Dice and things like that. And
you and 14,000 other people.
Exactly. But I was noticing the jobs that they just didn't have the jobs that I necessarily was looking for, or it was the same stuff every day or every week. So, let's talk about networking, both from the perspective of your personal networking community as well as a recruiter and how they can help you.
Yeah, and we were, I don't think we were live yet, but we were joking about it earlier about LinkedIn and our network and just growing that, and who's seeing your posts, and just connecting with individuals where you normally wouldn't have to or need to or have any reason to, but now it's really becoming more and more commonplace to be connecting with somebody across the country, and really your social network and your online presence overall, not only can that help you identify positions, but because it's out there, when companies are doing that hiring and they're looking for candidates, I mean, internal recruiters for big companies, they're scouring just like we would, LinkedIn profiles, online profiles, just being able to see, someone's activity, what have they done? What kind of skills do they have? So one, keeping that up to date is crucial, because you never know who's clicking and checking you out on LinkedIn. A lot of people go on it on private, and chances are those people are recruiter, wanting to check that out. So, I mean, it is important, because, someone like a Robert Half could see your profile and say, oh, wow, Tom, I didn't realize that you did this. Let me send you a message and say, hey, Tom, I know you're working, but if you ever thought about doing something else, this could be an attractive offer, or would you be interested in hearing about it? And I mean, if the last time you updated your profile was 96, Tom, then, we probably wouldn't reach out to you.
Right, yeah.
So I think your overall online presence, it really helps you be a more attractive overall candidate. For one, keep your skills and, your accomplishments up to date, as well as your contact information, right? Don't change your phone number and email and not change
it there, yeah.
So it can attract, again, if you're open to work, somebody taking a look at you and taking a look at you a little bit more seriously. So it's helpful.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of times you can actually, start to apply for positions via your online network. So you could do it on LinkedIn. Actually,
I was going to say that's exactly what I was going to jump in there and say. Like the last time, I won't say when this was. Last time I was, kind of looking for. I should say I'm always open for a good opportunity. So when people do reach out to me, I do consider it. And I know the last time, I not only did I find somebody it's mentioned on LinkedIn, but when I went into that company's website, it said, "Would you like to import your information from LinkedIn?"
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's awesome, because I hate typing all that stuff over and over again,
Yeah.
Here's the other thing I give some advice I give people, and maybe in talking to somebody like you, maybe you help me if I'm giving wrong advice or right advice, but I know that if I applied for a job today, it could be a 7 to 8 page resume, and I know that is just way too long. So I kind of put it, as we learned last week's show, I kind of gear it towards the job, but I use my LinkedIn profile to say, if anybody wants to see anything else about me, please go there and check it out. Is that right?
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, you'll see a lot of individuals put it on their header as well.
I do that.
So in technology, people may list their certifications and, underneath their name and their contact info. But a lot of people have started to put their LinkedIn profile. And I think that's become a best practice, because you can you can kind of shrink down your resume quite a bit. But obviously you've done additional things, and where can I find those additional things? Okay, great. I'll go check you out on LinkedIn.
I want to say this too, as somebody that does hiring on the hiring side, I really appreciate when people do put that on there, because I don't know what, I almost feel like I'm creeping on somebody if I'm checking out their LinkedIn profile, but if they put it on their resume, they're giving me permission.
They expect it.
Yeah, to go see more about them. And that's kind of, I feel more comfortable as a hiring manager if somebody adds that. So you out there looking for a job, man, do that.
Do that, and I'll tell you what, especially, I mean, we keep picking on LinkedIn, but you can really substitute almost any social platform here. But, on LinkedIn, the good thing about that is you never know who that person you're connected with, who they know. And, it really just starts to multiply your network. And again, I think of Robert Half because I work here. But I mean, we talk about a lot of internal things about, Robert Half hiring. We talk about jobs and projects that are coming up. And we start to go through our own LinkedIn network. Hey, who do we know? Who could be a good fit? Who should we reach out to? And, again, that goes back to the benefit of working, with a recruiter, working with Robert Half. But really, it speaks to your online presence and how important that is.
Yeah, too much too. Just chimed in there with a really good point. Like, helping somebody out get a job. You didn't even know them, but you knew their uncle or their family member.
Exactly.
Like, yeah,
Or
so
an
you
old
know somebody that can.
coworker or family friend. Yeah, I mean, you just never know.
Exactly. I know I have a lot of folks whenever they're looking for something, I keep my eye out, but it's kind of easy nowadays. And some of those places, like I know Robert Half has this, the Big L LinkedIn has, like you can put those alerts on there to say if you see a job in my area of this thing, you can get alerts too, and that really is helpful. So keeping that out there, keeping your social networking going. All right, Zach, we're coming down to the end of the show, believe it or not. So what else? Any other last tips or advice for doing the job searching or resume building or things like that?
Yeah, I would say, just don't be afraid of it overall. Especially if you're starting from scratch, having someone in your corner, like myself or any of my colleagues throughout Robert Half, it can be a benefit, to practice an interview if if you're looking for a new job and you haven't done it in a long time. So having somebody that's in your corner, practice that interview, sending the resume to us before you apply for a job. I think that partnership has really helped us, and we've seen candidates come back and back for more and more work, and I would say we're doing something right because of that. So really, I would just say don't be afraid. Just do it. If I could, be cliche, but there's a lot of resources out there, and just don't be afraid. Ask anybody. Send someone a message on LinkedIn. Shoot someone an email. It's there's a lot of jobs out there. Don't be afraid. And if you don't know where to look or who's hiring, ask us. Send me an email.
And here's so first of all, I didn't mention this at the top of the show, but this is our we're going to call this our quarterly career corner with Robert Half, and so we're going to invite I don't know if it's going to be you, Zach, although I'm hoping so. I like chatting with you. But one of the things we could talk about in the next episode could be something on the lines of like how, and maybe by then it'll have changed, but even though this is not new. Virtual interviews, how that's changed, and any tips like for people just before we call it a show, like any tips for people like virtual versus in person, and maybe it's going to be blended too. So
I would say definitely be prepared for it. It's more and more people are being asked to do a virtual interview. Find a quiet space, set up a background, a lot of those things that you should be doing anyways. But it also is the benefit to, working with a recruiter. You can practice ahead of time, check everything. This is a perfect example. This is almost like a virtual interview, right? And think of all the prep that we had to do just to make sure the technology worked, that everything was, up and running, the sound checks, the back. So, I mean, everything that you and I had to do, Tom, I would just say, to anyone out there, be prepared. It's becoming commonplace to be, doing a virtual interview. We've seen a lot via Zoom. We utilize Microsoft Teams. So we've seen quite a bit. If you have questions, just simply ask us, and hopefully we can get back to in-person interviews. I liked it. I was a big fan of shaking hands and seeing someone and checking out the environment. So
and I have done a few over the COVID, couple three virtual interviews, and they are definitely different because how we're already talking over each other and it's kind of challenging, and you don't want to feel like. I don't know. It just felt weird for me when I went to say something in the interview, because the ones I interviewed for were panel interviews, and those are fun in person, let alone doing that virtually, right? So anyway, before we get too much to mention something, I really liked her comment here. It says sometimes they ask for a video cover letter. Personally, I would rather do a video cover letter than type that long thing out. So that was an interesting thing. I have not heard that one yet, but.
I would say that's more rare than personally. So the positions that we've seen, very rare request on our end. But I could also tell you this: if you do a virtual cover letter, it's definitely a good way to set you apart because I don't know of a lot of people doing it.
And I was going to say, like, I know as a presenter, like when I submit proposals for conferences and companies to present, I could write up my abstract, and that sounds great. But if you see me and I'm popping on the screen and I'm excited, and I think
Exactly.
like a virtual, not that I would recommend anybody get crazy on a virtual cover letter or a video cover letter, but it does show personality and it does
sell
set
your
you apart.
personality. Exactly.
Yeah. Too Much Too always has great things to say on this show. So, hey, listen, we are at the end of the show, and I apologize. Well, I don't apologize. We went over our regular, snackable. By the way, I got that from one of your coworkers, Zach. Snackable show. Okay. But anyway. I don't apologize because this is great stuff and it's something we're going to do on a quarterly basis. But before we end the show, and first of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this. But before you go, tell us about your next event. I understand because you're with HDI and Robert Half, you have a really cool event coming up out on the West Coast.
Yeah, so we do our two chapters, Sacramento and San Francisco. We're actually doing a joint online networking mixer, but we do have some great content with it. It's all about resume writing and kind of gearing your resume to the job search, right?
So remember to add in the video cover letter because I don't know if that was appropriate, but I'll tell you
more research on that because I want to see if any, how many people on Robert Half, have been getting those requests. So I think that's actually pretty unique. And be able to show your personality, it seems like more and more people would ask for it. So
as long as your HR department doesn't screen that, so they, to keep everything, but I like that because I love to see the people and hear the people for their enthusiasm and their seriousness and such. So not that that wouldn't necessarily make me pick that person over another person, but it sure would help me understand who I'm, interviewing. Yeah,
absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
So if anyone needed help with their resume, I mean, just because the West Coast chapters are hosting it and providing it, anybody across the country is welcome to join. It's April 21st. So there'll be a lot of information going out. But if anybody's interested, you can reach out to Tom or myself, and we'll be more than happy to set you up and take a look at your resume and help you out.
Yep, and I changed screens on Zach, so I have my email address on the screen, and if you want me to share yours in the show notes for when we stream it, later, let me know, and we can certainly do that. But definitely appreciate your time, and thank everybody out there for watching this show, and we'll see Robert Half next quarter. By the way, today officially ends the first quarter of the year. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This COVID thing. Anyway. All right. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Remember, #HDI Local.